Alrighty, hello, good morning, and welcome to the Rookie's Guide to One Vision. Alright, so, first of all, there's two different things that end up happening with this mod. There's a lot of folks that have played this thing for years, that are just kind of coming in fresh to the mod itself, and there's a lot of folks that have never, touched a Tactics Ogre game, and this is their first experience. So, there's going to be kind of a few things to cover from both ends, so, bear with me. I'll try to explain that as best as I can in as short of a time as possible. Alright, first thing that tends to come up a lot of the time. How do you know that you've actually installed the mod correctly? Well, easiest one that you'll probably see first, Kashu's pants will be blue, Lance's armor will be gold. Just so you know, we got that out of the way right off the bat. Second thing, help, my entire game is broken because somebody just swung a sea bass at me and it exploded and I don't know the game crashed. This is an old bug that happened if somebody had multiple versions of install data while trying to run the mod at the same time. Basically, the game got confused and didn't know what version to load, and it was just this kind of hilarious combination of different files that would end up happening. That should be fixed in the latest version. So if you've got 97C or 97D that are currently out, both of those versions should have that issue corrected. Just make sure to read the extra instructions. All right. Next thing, how do I build a build in this game? How do I go for optimization? How do I make everything awesome? So first thing you need to know, the entire Ogre series is more of a team building thing than it is a building your hero units thing. You can make one individually strong unit, but even at maxed stats and everything else, they will still be completely killable. And hell, I've had a lot of cases where I had, solo runs with nearly god-tier characters that easily got slapped off a cliff by a random ghost and died. So it's one of those things where you're going entirely for a team. You usually want to go more for roles in mind rather than want to build the ultimate dude over here. So you may have several characters that are of the same class doing different things, or you may have multiple healers stacked up, or you may have multiple archers and things like that. So think of it more of like in an XCOM sense, as it were. Anyway, next thing, what weapons are the best? So every weapon's gonna have a different role. What I would recommend is just going through the store, seeing the kinds of different stuff that's available. You've got stuff from like poison claws to swords are usually going to be a good opener weapon. If you have, swords are going to be your highest raw damage, but sometimes they have issues against armor, or you got axes that are there specifically to break down armor. You got spears for long range. You got all kinds of stuff all over the place. But yeah, just so you know, you've got different options that open up constantly, including, once you hit Chapter 2, and this is going to be more for the long-termers, once crafting unlocks, they're not upgrades, they're side grades. So for example, say you have a crossbow here, and later on in the game they get their side grades, and this changes them into a sort of railgun type situation where they end up shooting through certain bits of cover, but they lose a lot of their range of movement. Or you got your bows, which will end up giving you far longer range, but potentially will not be able to reach as far as the originals could because they can't shoot past that range. So if you didn't know, with your standard bows, this applies to short bows and long bows here, they will be able to shoot past their normal range. That's actually what the trajectory skill is for. Additionally, I may notice skill-wise, if you're coming in from the original, there's not really as many things on here because all of the passive nonsense got removed, which basically means that yes, there's a lot more active moves for you to make, as well as just different class options. Next thing you should be aware of going into this, because you might be wondering, what on earth am I doing with a friggin' leader as a necromancer in Chapter 2? That's impossible. This is again for those long timers. You have a lot more hidden. Some of it is hidden, some of it's fairly open, new options available to you. So, as I was kind of trying to touch on earlier, every weapon type is going to have a role. There's really no meta or anything else, and the same thing goes for the classes. You've got a lot of different classes doing a lot of different roles. Like for example, your warriors / Amazons here is your first class, are usually going to be your weapon master kind of guy. They're solid all game if you want to, but they're mostly there to train up a hell of a lot of different weapons. They get the widest access to any of them. You got archers there for range. You got wizards as your long-range magic snipers, which is kind of odd for those that are coming back to this. But yeah, they're mostly your long ranger. You've got clerics that are going to be your tanky healer. Another thing that a lot of newer folks run into is how do I shut down a cleric? I can't seem to one-shot them, and I can't seem to get them to stop healing the entire team for all their health. What the hell, what do I do? It's a lot easier than it may look. So you actually have quite a few options, and if we go to the store here, we'll take a little bit of a quick peek. First thing you may notice here is claws. Let's say what a poison claws, if anything, do with it. They're just going to out-heal the poison. Think about it this way, and think about a lot of things in one vision this way as well. There's a lot going on, and everybody can only take one move, right? They only have their action move, and they have their standard move, but either way, they've got their one turn to do whatever they're going to do. If you run around with a bunch of characters, say, slapping a bunch of random poison debuffs all over the place, where do you think that healing's going to go? It's going to go to the one with the lowest health, meaning that you just have to distract everybody in this particular way. Let's say you have an issue with that healer, but you can make sure that they're stuck behind their lines, so you get a faster unit back there. You hit them with a bind, that's back there. Let's say you hit them with a breach from an axe, or you have a bunch of items in the store that can inflict that as well. Come in with a two-hander, then you can actually one-shot them. Or, for example, you've got spears. If you get spears to rank 2, so you probably have realized that there's weapon skills by this point. Your very first finisher on spears is a guaranteed silence, which means that, yes, they will not be healing anybody for a few rounds. If you've got warriors and things like that, you can guarantee a stun with Mighty Strike. You can additionally, if we kind of go down the list here, you can additionally go to these ones right here. You can throw out some poisons with your blowguns. They're a fairly early weapon here as well. You've got stun on your basic blowguns as well. Additionally, you can potentially just snipe them with archers over and over. Or you can do what I like to call a healing distraction, wherein you just have a bunch of archers or whatever else throwing out damage in just random locations to the point where, yeah, they just don't know what to heal. And say there's a leader that you're trying to snipe there, so you leave the leader at like 3/4 of their health. We see that there's a squishy unit behind them, right? They're kind of way back there a little bit. So you got, let's say you get your Canopus or your Sarah back there, and you just you snipe away at their wizard person, but you don't finish them off. You don't actually go for the kill there. Instead, the healer is going to suddenly run backwards, try to heal that injured person, and suddenly the one that you were actually aiming for is nice and open and ready to be finished off. So think about it that way. Always try to think of having everybody move as one cohesive team. Now, additionally, as far as earlier classes that are available, you can actually get Teranites at the same time that you get Knights. So we were covering their roles earlier. So the healer is your basic healer. Your Spellblade is going to be your, like, pretty much your ultimate utility class early on. So they can be support casters, they can be frontline fighters. They have the inbuilt ability to throw items, so that's pretty handy for them, as well as being able to heal themselves while taking another move. The main danger with them is that you're giving them too many jobs at once, so try to pick a couple things for them to do. You know, you'll be just fine. Knights are there as your frontline tank. They are going to be very difficult to actually take down from the front, and yeah, they can potentially just serve as a wall. Your phalanxes and things like that. For those that are coming in from the original game, Phalanx in this one is essentially what Rampart Shadow was, but with double the range and about 1/4 of the cost. The Teranite, on the other hand, is the offensive version with a bunch of fear debuffs, which is it's arguably the best debuff in the game. So they have a guaranteed chance to make somebody terrified of them with their attack. This essentially means that it's able to reduce that unit's ability to do damage, as well as increases the amount of damage you do to them, as well as slows them down a little bit. It's pretty fantastic. Berserkers, on the other hand, are just kind of aiming for raw damage, as well as being able to swing in a wide area. Ninjas, rogues, and beast tamers you get a little after that. So ninjas and rogues you'll usually get in Chapter 2. Beast tamers you can get in Chapter 1. The first fight that you have trying to save Sistina, you can get 3 of the beast tamer marks. And you might be wondering where this Necromancer came from if you're a long-timer. This one, if you go to Nibith, you actually have Sarah coming in as a rogue. She will be able to steal a class mark from him, as well as one of the ghosts will actually drop one of the necromancy spells. Let's see if we actually have those. I don't believe I have all of them yet. But yes. If we look through his spells here, you get Living Dead off of the first Necromancer that you fight in the game, as well as I believe it's a Rebuild it's either Rebuild or like Tainted Love or something like that you get from one of the ghosts in Nibith Spite. So just so you know, yes, you absolutely can have a Necromancer and do your whole undead army thing like you used to do in the SNES version. So you have that there. Additionally, in terms of other stuff you should know, Canopus, you might wonder what his role is. Well, if we look at this right here, this skill right here is what his role is. So, Sidestep and Renewal. Basically, what this means is he is an evasion tank. He's one of the few classes, and his class is actually unique to him now. He's one of the few classes that's specifically made to be able to function pretty decently while taking, essentially plinking and dodging light damage while throwing out a bunch of random harassment moves. And that's the other thing you should know about this mod. The kind of low damage weapons, like your daggers, your fists, and things like that, never underestimate the power of harassment. Like I was saying earlier, you can potentially just whittle down units from different sides. You could potentially distract healers. Never underestimate how good a well-placed debuff or just even random small amounts of damage might potentially be. So that's just something to keep in mind. Just remember that historically, that was always a thing. I mean, if you've ever played like Age of Empires or something like that, you might have been wondering what the deal was with people running around with like javelins and light shields and things like that. I mean, historically, that was the thing. They had skirmishers sitting around on the sidelines just trying to create openings for everybody else, and that is absolutely a class in this. So, for example, like let's say we go over here, you have like a dagger and short bow with heavy tank armor in the front, just trying to harass that way. Or say instead you have an opener going for a heavy axe. There's a bunch of different little roles that you could potentially consider. So look through the shop, see what tools are available. Just remember that everything can be viable. Just you generally want to keep a few heavy weapons on hand just to deal with heavier units. But yeah, experiment with it, see what works for your party composition. There is no real meta to this. There's a bunch of different weapons with a bunch of different roles. And yes, that should be there. Next up, in terms of magical typey stuff, what do you need to know there? Well, let's take a look at the spell list real quick. So right at the very start of the game, you've generally got stuff like this. So you're going to be able to fly off of air. You're going to get stuff like... actually, I believe these might be the second unlocks in the game. But yeah, you're generally going to see a lot of movement buffs off of air, movement and speed buffs and debuffs. You're generally going to see a lot of bulk things. So, for example, being able to use magnets to cause people's melee weapons to miss, or having the ability to just sit there and reflect damage for a little bit. It's not as broken as it sounds, but there is some potential fun cheese with that, or boosting people's defense. Electric is really useful early on because you have stuff like Electrify that would be able to charge up TP for whatever you need it for. You've got True Strike off of there. You've got Mass Stun. You've got stuff like Corrosion here off of water, which removes TP as well as gives poison. I should note for the long-timers, poison and venom are the same thing in this. So essentially, it is really good. Just so you know. Purify also gets rid of poison, as well as gives you the ability to throw out some haze to deal with arrows. No, oh, another thing actually. We should finish the spell list real quick. Yeah, you gets a lot of offense boosting stuff off of fire, as you'd expect. You get a lot of defense boosts off of ice, as you'd expect. You got a lot of heals and buffs off of light, and then dark is generally going to do a bit more damage, but it's going to have more utility. Stuff like Drain Heart, by the way, is based off percentage. So if you're coming off FFT, think stuff like Demi. And then you've got some Draconic, shockingly, that will show up early as well. Draconic doesn't cost items anymore, just in case you are wondering. In terms of general equipment stuff, there's light and heavy shields. They have side grades available to them as well. You've got armor all over the place, but generally stuff like mail or balder or later on damask plate and stuff like that will be there for the purposes of your bulky option. So your heavy armor will generally just give you more potential to scale down incoming damage or just deflect it outright, whereas your light armor will be there trying to avoid it while still giving you a little bit of a bonus. And then you've got everything in between. Glove-wise, you'll usually have your big hitty ones, your kind of generalist ones, and your crit boosting ones. Leg-wise are going to be similar to the body armor, and then jewelry is going to be fairly similar to what it was before. Next, in terms of debuffs that you should be aware of, stuff like Strengthen and Breach, it's going to be increasing or decreasing the maximum damage that something can take. So, for example, if you got through somebody's armor, your maximum damage would be greatly benefited by this, whereas if you didn't get past armor at all, or if you just only barely did, it won't do very much for you. But yeah, generally speaking, it's going to be pretty strong in this one. But just so you know, in terms of debuffs and things like that, there's a bunch of items in there, as well as a bunch of skills that these guys come with that will give you certain bonuses. So, for example, if we look at Vigorous Attack here, it gives you a True Strike and Dodge bonus to all people in the area. So that's roughly going to be a 20% bonus to those particular things, so about 20% chance to dodge melee things, as well as about a 20% accuracy boost, so that's really handy for your frontliners. Additionally, your archers, which, do I actually have any archers in this team? Apparently not. However, we can look at least some of the skills here. If we look at Trajectory, does he actually have Trajectory? No. Not yet. There we go. So you may notice a few skills now, like Trajectory or Siege or whatever else, will also benefit you for their particular role. So like Trajectory will show you the little laser of where your arrow is going to go, but it'll also give you True Flight. So if you get True Flight off of this, as well as put on your bow skill, you're usually going to have no issue actually landing your ranged shots, even in the rain. You may go down to like 70%, but still that's better than 25. So yeah, it scales up pretty darn well. Last thing I should probably note, just like the original, if you have somebody going down a particular weapon skill, keep them using that particular weapon skill. Don't try to change it partway through the game and then wonder why you're not doing as well. It isn't as punishing as it was in the original, but just so you know, try to try not to screw yourself that way. Another thing, stuff like Mighty Strike, Fearful Impact, anything that says that it's guaranteed critical or a guaranteed hit, means that the secondary effect on any weapon, like for example, if we look at the Breach effect on the axe here, if they were to use Mighty Strike, that would have a 100% chance of inflicting Breach. So potentially very useful thing to cheese there. Anything else that we want to cover here? Oh yeah, Cudgels. Actually good. You can actually make a viable stick smacking build if you want. Additionally, you may notice some things actually have a use effect on them. So for example, staffs and books. If you go for the staffs, it'll give you a 20% bonus to your max magic damage, as well as books will give you a single use of Meditate, which will boost your MP. But anyway, that about covers kind of what you need to know at the start of the game for this one. Just main takeaway, experiment with everything. Experiment with all kinds of stuff. I'll leave a link to the build guide. But yeah, just experiment, build for roles. Don't try to make like a, friggin' hero team. Try to build for different jobs. Try to make them do those particular jobs, and yeah, have everybody work as a team. So I think that more or less covers the early part for One Vision as far as we need to get into it. Yeah, main thing that I cannot stress enough, do not always go for the big numbers. It seems like something that would work early on. Bear in mind the actual heavy armor options early on are very limited. So two-handers, very strong early on. You may start realizing, wait, I really would like to be able to use a shield now. And then you won't suddenly have that option. Just so you know, around the mid-game, you'll see a lot more of stuff like parry and deflect showing up. Not all characters can use them, but they are something that's going to become a bit more available. These are essentially a roll that happens separately of your main attack. So, for example, like say somebody took a melee attack and they would have normally succeeded, but at its base rank, there's about 5% chance that it'll just reflect it outright. However, if that ends up getting trained up a little bit, it ends up going up by about another 5% per rank. Additionally, the different types of shields will give you bonuses to this, as well as some of the helmets and leggings. So leggings will deflect more, the helmets will parry more, light shields will parry more, heavy shields will deflect more. So yeah, stack that as you will. Additionally, heavy spears will parry as well. And I think that about covers all that we need to cover early on. Just, yeah, keep your mind open for what different things do, and, well, should be just fine. Should be just fine. There's a lot less to say about getting into One Vision because it's a lot more self-explanatory. So if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. And yeah, always remember to think of everything realistically for your builds. What do you think would physically work more to get past some heavy plate? You know, big ol' two-handed axe or a little dinky knife. Yes, I know historically they finished them off with daggers. They didn't go and swing them. But anyway, have a good one. Take care.